Bismillah. Okay, so Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu wa salam ala Sayyidil Anbiya wal Mursaleen, Allahumma alimna ma yanfa'una wa anfa'na bima tu'allimuna wa zidna bi fadlika ilman wa ta'liman innaka ala kulli shay'in qadir. It says Babu Tanzih, i.e., purifying, right, and saving from harm, as-sawm. It says Al-Fasl Al-Awwal, right, so Sheikh Hussein, the way that this book works is it's based on Baghawi's Misbah al-Sunnah. So Imam Baghawi, he wrote this book called Misbah al-Sunnah, and he broke each chapter into 3 categories. Category number 1 is Sahih, category number 2 is Hasan, category number 3 is Da'if. So category number 1 is hadith that are in Bukhari Muslim. Category number 2, hadiths that are in Nasa'i and Abu Dawud and Tirmidhi. And then category number 3 are hadiths that are in those kind of books but are weak. It's not a very, so that's what, so then a Tabrizi came along, got the Misbah al-Sunnah, and then tweaked it. He added some things, changed some things. The initial breakdown of Imam Baghawi is a huge, obviously he's big Shafi'i, big Muhaddith, Mufassir, everything. But there's that concept that hadiths are either Sahih, Hasan or Da'if, based on like which books they're in. It's not really kind of, it's not very tight, it's not very accurate at all really. So anyway, so that's the kind of general way he organizes it. The first chapter.
Understood.
That's that kind of general idea, right? خير. وعن أبي هريرة, and just another book class we did a long time ago. I don't know if Aban, were you in the Muqidha class?
Yes, Sidi, I was there.
So you started, right?
During COVID, right? Yeah, that's when I started.
That's when I started. So anyway, so I have a class on the Muqidha, which is in Mustalah al-Hadith. That class is about 15 hours, 10 to 15 hours, I can't remember. It's all recorded. So if you want access to that, Sheikh Hussein, I can send that to you, inshallah. It's a good.
What book is it?
It's called the Al-Muqidha. It's a matan in Mustalah al-Hadith by.
Oh no, I've read it. Alhamdulillah. Yeah, I've already read it with someone.
Alhamdulillah. خير.
جزاك الله خيرا بس.
وعن أبي هريرة قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من لم يدع قول الزور ولا عمل به فليس لله حاجة أن يدع طعامه وشرابه. Right. So here there's an important issue in the Hanbali school, and it exists in the Shafi school. So in general, we say in the Shafi school that if something is manhiyun anhu li kharijin, then it doesn't affect the sihha of that action, right? So when I tell you, for example, don't punch somebody while praying, the punching somebody while praying will not affect the prayer at all, right? It's 2 different things. So the Hanbalis, the issue is in the Shafi school, we have some issues where it's kind of in between, and the Hanbali school as well. But by default, these kind of scenarios, right, where something is haram in the action and outside of the action, right? It's manhiyun anhu li kharij, something that is not kharij, it's kharij was not lazim, right? It's kharij, what's it called? Muqarin, we call it kharij muqarin, right? It's not essential to the action, nor is it of the it's not prohibited in itself, nor is it prohibited, but it's something that is found in that action and outside of that action. So here, somebody swears, somebody shows spite to somebody insults somebody, so punches somebody while fasting. We say, what's that got to do with fasting? In that fasting could have been done in the action and outside the action. Okay, but here, what do we say in the Shafi school? We're going to say the fast counts, but yubtil al-thawab. You don't get the thawab, right? And so this is frequently the case in the Shafi school. What we're going to do is whenever something is manhiyun anhu for something like this, right? Like, for example, praying while you need to go to the bathroom, right? So we're going to say it's valid, but you're going to decrease the reward. So we're going to not do ibtal of the sihha, we're going to do the ibtal of the thawab, right? So here, this is the same thing here. We're going to say, and I believe this is the position of the Jumhur, right? I think there's a weak position in the Hanbali school that ghiba will break the fast. and it's quoted from them, but it's not, I don't think that's relied upon, Allahu Alam, is, correct me if I'm wrong, Sheikh Hussein, okay, is that these are two different actions. So this is simply muqarana, right? This is simply muqarana. That here, qaranat al-ghibatu as-sawm. That's all. They just happen to come together. So it's not going to affect the sihha of the fast, but it will affect the reward, right? It will affect the reward. Khair, right? And as many of you have been mentioned, Sheikh Hussein will know better than me, is the 4 levels of fasting, right? Imam Ghazali and others break it down, these 4 levels of fastings. We have level number 1 is just a sihha, like you did actually fast, right? You fulfilled the conditions, alhamdulillah. Number 2 is you didn't do any outward sins, right? So you didn't swear, you didn't look at something haram, you didn't punch somebody, whatever it was, okay? Level number 3 then is you didn't do anything haram internally or externally. So there was no, you didn't look at somebody with spite, you didn't have hatred towards other people, you weren't resentful that you're fasting or resentful about something that happened to you, you know, adam rida bi qada'illah or something like that while you're fasting. There was no riya, etc. Right? So it was something that was neither, there was no sin that your fast was valid, no sin, no outward sin, no inward sin. And then the 4th level is as-sawm an ghayrillah. Right? Is it this person, is their whole focus from Fajr to Maghrib is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Everything else just came to their mind and their soul and their emotions in the context of that. That was the context that everything was happening in. Right? And that was the continual focus, right? So that is the real fast. That's the Sawm Khawas al Khawas, right? But Sawm al Khawas is inward and outward sins, right? And so, you know, as we all know, a thought comes to your mind, man, I hate Lebanese. And you're like, that's haram, you can't think like that. So a thought that comes to your mind that you push away, that's not your action. The point is, yeah, don't like that guy, Sheikh Hussein, don't like him. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's a bad guy. So a thought comes to your mind and you push it away, it's not your thought, right? I hate my life. Say, no, my life's actually good, alhamdulillah. Right? It's so unfair that this person got this. No, alhamdulillah, I'm happy with it actually. Right? He's probably lying. No, why we have so done? Why do you think he's lying? Right? So a thought comes to your mind, you push it away, that's not your thought. Right? That's not considered your action. But when you accept it, so now that came to you while you were fasting, and you're like, yeah, that guy's a liar. That guy's just showing off. There's no reason to assume he's showing off. There's no reason to assume he's lying. That's just good sort of done. You've broken the reward of your fast. Right? So may Allah protect us. Okay. وعن عائشة رضي الله عنها قالت كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقبل ويباشر وهو صائم وكان أملككم لأربه or لإربه, right? His sexual control. So here there's an issue, and again, Sheikh Hussein, you can help us with this, with the fiqh issue, is that we have a problem in the Shafi'i school, is the default is haram to engage in any sexual activity while you're fasting, right? So to look with lust, or touch with lust. The issue here is that it's not super clear in the Shafi'i school, number 1. Number 2 is it says he had more control over his sexual drive. So are you saying he used to touch in a non-sexual way and used to kiss in a non-sexual way? That's easy. He used to hold a hand, hug, etc., kiss on the cheek. But if you're saying no, he used to kiss in a sexual way, but he could control himself and that not leading to intercourse, right? Then there's something else. Then we would say, well, hang on a minute, there's a dalil that sexual activity is not haram during intercourse, as long as it doesn't lead to intercourse itself, or as long as it doesn't lead to ejaculation, right? And maybe Sheikh Hussein, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Like, we have an issue in this Shafi'i school, like it's not that dabt between where that line is. It's not super clear. And you're going to find with muta'akhirin, they know the dabt of it, but it's like not super clear with mutaqaddimin. Allahu a'lam.
And when you said ضوت, as they say, the shahwa,
Yeah.
but it's like, you know, even you're right, even that's a bit weird.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like sometimes you really think about it, it gets weird sometimes. Like
Yeah.
how can you like picture that happening without shahwa?
Exactly. Yeah.
Unless maybe it's totally habitual or something.
Yeah. So, you know, there's some really weird scenarios that can happen. that, but but it's like, but in general, so we have that, that issue there. So I don't know in the other schools where how they define exactly what are the limits exactly, wallahu alam. But certainly, obviously,
So may I ask a question about
go
the
ahead.
1099?
Go ahead, Yabsuna.
Yeah, no, you mentioned the point that something being منهي عنه لأمر خارج
Hmm.
ومنهي عنه وهو مقارن له.
Yeah.
So, how does this hadith play into that exactly?
So the person that the Prophet ﷺ says, if you leave off food, right? So you fasted, okay, but while you're fasting, you did the haram. So do we say it's one action such that now your riba should do ibtal of your psalm? We say no. Okay, why? Because it's the amrin muqarin, right? Like we would say, for example, al-wudu bil-ma' al-maghsub, right? So how would we say that's valid? We would
Mm.
say it's valid لأن تم الوضوء وتم الغصب في آن واحد ولكن هو مجرد مقارنة. Like what happened was there's two completely separate actions that happened. One is inappropriate misappropriation of someone else's wealth. Like you can't steal their water, you can't use it without their permission. But while you were doing that, you were also doing a valid wudu. So it's two different actions. And how do I know it's two different actions? Because you tasawwar in fikakuhuma, right? I could put theft of water in one way and wudu in something else, right? So that's going to be
So
valid.
that's clear, but how does it play out here?
So here we're saying because they're two separate actions, it's valid. But then we're going to say it's valid, but it's still manhi and anhu. So we're going to do ibtal of the thawab and not ibtal of the amal itself.
But is this as watertight as we'd like to think it is? Because Ghazali, he has an ikhtiyar that like actually breaks your fast.
Yeah, so that's an ikhtiyar. But that's going to have to so if it actually breaks the fast, yeah. But does he say what? Did he say what he says? Like yajibu what's it called? Al imsak then?
No, that's probably something said in the Ihya, which I don't
Yeah,
know.
so, so the problem. So I think that exists in the Hanbali school. I've seen it quoted from the Hanbali school, right? So he's taking the dhahir of the hadith, right? But the default is we don't do that in fact. The default is we're going to try and look at something and say, can we separate them, right? Can we separate them?
No, what you're saying is understood, but it's like, is the argument as watertight as we think it is? Like the Mu'tamid is like what you mentioned.
Oh yeah, is the argument? Yeah, yeah. So is it as
You're
tight?
right.
And it's problematic. So in the Shafi school then we have serious problems because
Hmm.
we will, or actually the Jumhur, like if you look at the Hanbalis, they are more like moral, if that makes sense. In that,
Hmm.
like, so you're telling me that you killed somebody, you killed somebody, you put a prayer mat over them, okay, and you got their water that then became the property of their inheritors, and you made wudu and you prayed over that dead body with a prayer mat over them, and the prayer is valid. So yeah,
Hmm.
so like, okay, but the prayer is not maqbool, like qat'an. Say no. Okay, what's the point of saying that then? Like, what is the point of a prayer? What is the point of the ibadah? Okay, that is sahih but not maqbool. You know what I'm saying? So now we go to
Hmm.
the other extreme, and you say, well, therefore, every single action that is not valid, that is not accepted by Allah, is not valid. That's a dangerous place to go because now it's not really true. There's many scenarios where it's not like that, where like everybody will
Yeah.
think the prayer is valid. So where do we draw the line? It's very difficult, right?
Yeah. But also we can say this hadith it's not explicit in saying it's invalid at all.
Yes, it's not. But what does it mean? Yeah, so it's true. It's not explicit, and that's the case with all of
Hmm.
these things, right? When you go, for example, when you say like the whole issue of even the relationship between the nahi and invalidity, right? So you say, okay, what's your delil for something being invalid? Okay, the Prophet said don't do it. Okay, well maybe the Prophet
Hmm.
said don't do it, and it's still valid.
Hmm.
Like so the Hanafis they say a nahi yufidu al-sihha, right? So when you say, for example, don't do X, that means X exists. Like I can't if it doesn't exist, then how can I do it? Right? So when you say like don't fast on Eid, that means you could fast on Eid. Otherwise, how could I do it if it wasn't a thing? You know?
Understood.
Right.
Jazakallah khair.
So you know, so it's a major problem. And the whole issue of sihha and fasad and qabul is a major problem that we don't understand. In reality, nobody understands it, and everyone's just doing a kind of ijtihad based on a certain system. Allahu a'lam. Khair. Okay. وعنها قالت كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يدركه الفجر في رمضان وهو جنب من غير حلم فيغتسل ويصوم. Right? So the deal that you can be that so the question is, if a woman is menstruating for 1 second of the fasting day, does the fast count? No. Okay. Can you have intercourse while you're fasting? No. Okay. So how does janaba connect with fasting? You say it doesn't. So it's not related. So janaba is not analogous to menstruating, nor is it analogous to intercourse itself. All right, it's not the same thing. So yes, you could be in janaba for your whole life and you could still fast Ramadan. Right? It's not related. That's the point. Right? And this goes in the face of other ahadith that you know the reason why that many of the Sahaba mention this because there's other hadith or other claims that if you're in janaba, you're gonna have to do that. The fast doesn't count, right? Okay, but so Jumhur ulama 100% it does, right? وعن ابن عباس قال إن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم احتجم وهو محرم واحتجم وهو صائم, right? So obviously again flies in the face of the hadith that the Prophet ﷺ is narrated to have said, whoever does hijama while fasting, then he's broken his fast, right? And so we'd say no, that's not the case. The Prophet ﷺ did hijama while he was fasting and did his hijama also when he was in ihram. It's totally fine. Okay. وعن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من نسي وهو صائم فأكل أو شرب فليتم صومه فإنما أطعمه الله وسقاه. Right? So this is again the same question Sheikh Hussein asks. How sarih is this? Okay, so the Malikis come along and say, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. We all agree, right? All of us agree that if you forget to do something you have commanded to do, being commanded to do, right? So then you still have to do it. So النسيان والجهل والسهو تؤثر في التروك لا في المأمورات. Right? You didn't know and you did something you weren't supposed to do. You forgot and you did something you weren't supposed to do. You accidentally did something you weren't supposed to do. Generally in fiqh, with many exceptions, but generally it's going to be overlooked. Right? It's going to be overlooked. Right? So here, this is not min bab at-turuk. This is min bab al-ma'murat. This is from things that you're supposed to do. So the Malikis, they say, are you seriously telling me that you forgot to fast, meaning you ate and drank? So you forgot to fast, but yet miraculously, in contradistinction to prayer, which if you forget to pray, you have to do qada. You forget to pay zakat, you have to do qada. You forget to do sujood, you have to do sujood. You forget to do fatiha, you have to do fatiha. Anything that's a ma'mur bihi, anything that you're commanded to do, if you forget it, you have to go and do it. So here you're telling me that I can not fast, basically, because that's what happened. He didn't fast in that he didn't eat and drink, right? And you can get away with it? You say, yes. Okay, what's the dalil? The Prophet said, فَلْيُتِمَّ صَوْمَهُ. You say, well, فَلْيُتِمَّ صَوْمَهُ, that's called imsak, habibi. So the Maliki say, yeah, you have to do imsak to the end of the day, and then you have to do qada. There we go. So this hadith is not crystal clear. The hadith is not crystal clear. Right? So that's their interpretation. Our interpretation is to take the zahir, فَلْيُتِمَّهُ, and خلاص, right? فَلْيُتِمَّهُ. And it says, فَإِنَّمَا أَطْعَمَهُ اللَّهُ وَسَقَاهُ. Right? This is the context is the imtinan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, it's okay. I've given you for that for free, don't worry about it. This is like the kafir asli who becomes Muslim, no qada, خلاص. You don't have to do qada, don't worry about it. Even though he's mukhatab b'shari'ah before sharia, right? The kafir asli was sinful for missing dhuhr and asr and maghrib, he became Muslim now, khalas, musamah. That's it, right? So we understand it. We take the jumhur take the zahir of the hadith and say إنما أطعمه الله وسقاه. That means min bab al-imtinan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying it's okay, don't worry about it. And how we'd explain it? We say that it's difficult, right? It's difficult to you know, it's a hard thing to remember. So when you're praying, right, it's like praying is an active process. Fasting is an inactive process, like you're not doing something. So here it's hard to remember, so it's excused, right? Right? That's how we look at it. Wallahu a'lam. So now, when we say al-mashaqqa tajlibu taysir, we're going to say um, right? That's going to say in something that is mutakarrir and adi, not something that's nadir, right? So we're going to see Sheikh Hussein, we're going to see countless times in fiqh, right? We're going to say, for example, the man he doesn't have to wash under his beard, but the woman does because an nadir la hukma lahu. Okay, so now we're going to apply an nadir la hukma lahu to this, right? And we're going to say Sheikh Hussein is fasting. He woke up in the morning, first day of Ramadan. He was at work with his non-Muslim colleagues, so he just forgot, right? Like whatever. So he forgot, and he had a cup of coffee. He's like, "Oh, subhanallah." Someone's like, "Hey, dude, I thought isn't it Ramadan?" And like, "Oh yeah, I forgot." So subhanallah, his friend reminded him. So he had a cup of coffee in the morning. Later on, he was in a meeting and he just drank some water. And subhanallah, he forgot again. Happens. And then there's like, oh, don't forget the lunch. We're gonna have lunch at this other place today. And like, oh, we have this meeting and lunch at another place. So he goes there and he eats a full lunch. After the full lunch, he remembers again, right? And then he goes back to the office and he forgets again, has another cup of coffee. And then he's going home and it's about 4 hours till iftar. And he goes home, falls asleep, wakes up, makes himself some lunch, and then his mum calls him like, hey, you coming home for iftar or what? And he's like, oh man, I ate like 10 times a day. So do we say an-nadir la hukma lahu, right? And so we say this is nadir, and so we say no, this is like it's normal to forget a few times, but it's not normal to forget 10 times. And so that does break the fast. Or do we go with the zahir of the hadith? The asah in the school, in the Shafi school, is we go with the zahir of the hadith. So even if it's mutakarrir, even if it's like ridiculous, like you forgot every 5 minutes, Habibi, right? Even if it's something that's like silly and laughable, we go with the Zahir hadith, right? But the argument, the khilaf al-adhar or khilaf al-sahih, khilaf al-asah, is no, Habibi, nadir la hukma lahu, right? So man nasiya, right? That the nisyan is warid because it's difficult and people forget. But nadir la hukma lahu, somebody who forgets 10 times and eats, he didn't even fast a single day of Ramadan because every single day he forgot and ate. That's ridiculous, right? You've all seen that video of that guy, right? Falling over and eating all the what is it?
The
Some potatoes
shawarma.
and shawarma,
Yeah, like
something.
yeah, right. So 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 there's the khilaf there. So do we apply the principle and nadir la hukm lahu, right? Or do we not? Or are we just going with the zahir of the nas? And so the Shafi relied upon position, and Shafi school we go with the zahir of the nas, right? As opposed to saying it's restricted to only particular scenarios. Wallahu a'lam.
Could we also say that this is made stronger by the hadith that رفعت عن أمتي الخطأ والنسيان واستكره عليه? That
Yes,
makes it stronger as well.
yes, but the problem is we're gonna say, right, and this is mabsut in you see this in أشباه النظائر and others that we're gonna say that رفع عن أمتي. What does that mean? That means the ithm.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, yeah.
so the ithm is marfu. Okay. Okay, so now I'm on Hajj, for example, and I accidentally killed somebody. رفع عن أمتي, no, I still have to pay the diya, right? Or it could
Hmm.
be my asabat, right? Or if I'm on Hajj and I was forced, or mustukri halay, I was forced to shave my head. But so the ithm is marfu', but not the blood, the dam. That's the dam, right? So there's many scenarios like that. Or as well, and it's not absolute. So we say, for example, let's say somebody who it's not an absolute sense. We say, for example, somebody who they're praying and they forget they're praying, they turn a little bit away from the qibla because they forgot they were praying. Fine, they do istidbar of the qibla. No, like how could you forget and turn around that much? You know. So in the mubtilat salah, it's going to be you ate a small amount, right? It's not mutlaq, right? So so that's a general principle, but there's other qawaid that are going to come in as well, and Allahu a'lam.
No.
Khair. Um, so there's always this interplay between like there's a hadith and another hadith, or hadith and a qaida, or hadith and various qawaid. Like how much are these other hadiths or this verse of the Quran or these other qawaid are they going to eat away at the text? You know? So like sometimes sometimes what you realize is particularly if you don't look to study another madhab, you don't realize how much was done, right? So if you compare, I'll give you two examples, right? the hadith, for example, of the dog licking from the bowl, right? Versus washing your hands 3 times before you put your hand in the bowl, right? So hadith, when you wake up, you should wash your hand 3 times before you put it in the bowl because you don't know where your hand spent the night. How do we Shafis deal with that? We basically attack that hadith with various different qawaid, right? We do not say that, for example, there's a type of najasa mughallada that has to be washed 3 times. We just say that's min bab istifat. It's recommended, right? Number one. Number two, we say al-asl tahara, right? So basically, it's just kind of like, it's just a nadab. It's just recommended, you know. So it's like makruh and not haram, even though the hadith says don't. And your hands are not really najas, right? And so we're basically looking at that hadith from the angle of various different qawaid. And we've kind of limited the effect of the hadith a lot. Whereas when we come to the hadith of the dog, it's like everything. We treat it absolute. And then we do qiyas from it to the pig and this and this and this, etc. And the dog stepping with wet feet on your carpet and da. It's like a whole thing, right? And so there's many ways that you can do that, right? Like there's many ways you can do that. So like Al-Qadi Abu Bakr and Ibn Arabi, he looked at that hadith of the dog in a similar kind of way that we, the Shafis, look at the hadith about washing your hand 3 times. He's like, well, look, I mean, there's how the Prophet dealt with dogs, how he dealt with cats. The reason why, if a cat licks from it's not considered najas, is because it comes in and out of your house. So he says basically, a dog that comes in and out of your house, like a guard dog, like a sheep dog, like a, functional dog that you're allowed to keep, those kind of dogs are not najas. Because that would be the same, that would be like, it's the same logic as the cat. Like if a cat licks from the bowl, it doesn't matter because these things that come in and out. So there's actually quite a lot of things you can do, like with a hadith. When you put it together with, or a verse of the Quran, when you put it together with other qawaid, with other hadiths, and you can kind of push it either way. It's not ashwa. It's not like just whatever, it's not just like however you want. It's not like that, but there is an element to that. So like you kind of look at it in both ways. Allahu alam. So here we can go Maliki and say, oh yeah, you complete it, i.e., complete the fast, do itmam, imsak to the end of the day, and then do qada, right? You could say that. You could also go to the other extreme and say, no, you can just eat as much as you want, as long as it's forgetful, right? And then you can have something in the middle and say, well, as long as it's reasonable, like you did, that wasn't a ridiculous scenario, right? There's various ways that you could approach the hadith in a ilmi and real way. Wallahu alam. Okay, جزاكم الله خير أبا. وعنه قال بينما نحن جلوس عند النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إذ جاءه رجل فقال يا رسول الله هلكت. قال ما لك؟ قال وقعت على امرأتي وأنا صائم. فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم هل تجد رقبة تعتقها؟ قال لا. قال فهل تستطيع أن تصوم شهرين متتابعين؟ قال لا. قال هل تجد إطعام 60 مسكينة؟ قال لا. قال اجلس. ومكث النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فبينا نحن على ذلك أتي النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بعرق فيه تمر والعرق المكتل الضخم. قال أين السائل؟ قال أنا. قال خذ هذا فتصدق به. قال رجل أعلى أفقر مني يا رسول الله فوالله ما بين لابتيها يريد الحرتين the two sides of Medina أهل بيت أفقر من أهل بيتي. فضحك النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم حتى بدت أنيابه ثم قال أطعمه أهلك. Right? So here, first of all, the issue is the fuqaha. They're going to look at this hadith and we're going to say what's relevant and what's not relevant. Right? So the fact that he was sad, right? He said, Ya Rasulullah, I've killed myself. Like, is that relevant? The fact that, for example, other versions mention he had a loud voice, right? That he was a Bedouin. Like, is that relevant that he's a Bedouin? Like, no. So every faqih, again, will be cutting out things that they deem irrelevant, right? That they deem irrelevant, right? So going back, for example, to that hadith about the Prophet said, you don't know if فَلَا يَدْرِي أَيْنَ بَاتَتْ يَدُهُ. He doesn't know where his hand spent the night. Ibn Habib and Maliki, he says that's relevant because what it means is you had intercourse last night, you didn't make ghusl, and you slept and you had put filth on you, and you don't know where your hand spent the night. So he said that's the specific, that scenario. That's what it's talking about. It's the context, right? That's the context. Even Imam Shafi, he looks at that as relevant. He said, they used to do they didn't used to do they used to do istinja with stones, and then they used to sweat, and maybe their hand might touch their private parts, right? So there's certain things like whenever you look at something, you're every single person is looking at a text in a context and forcing a context and forcing variables on it, excluding things that are irrelevant and adding things that are relevant. That's what everybody's doing, right? That's just the nature of the human mind, right? And so the faqih says, is this relevant? This is not relevant. Is it relevant that he was sad about it? No, it's not to the faqih, is it? Is it relevant that he was fasting? Yes. Is it relevant that he broke his fast specifically in this way? So here the Shafis are going to say, yes, of course. The fact that it was intercourse is relevant, right? Other ulama are going to say, like the Hanafis and Malikis, say, no, the point is that he broke his fast. So what it means is, it doesn't matter if he's regretting. It doesn't matter if it was a man. It doesn't matter if he was regretted it. It doesn't matter if the Prophet then asked him what his problem was. It doesn't matter about what matters, what doesn't matter. So the Shafis, we're going to come along and say it matters that he's a man, and it matters that it was fasting Ramadan, and it matters that it was intercourse. These are the three variables that are relevant, and that it was intentional, and that he knew about it. Right? We're going to add those things. So if it's not Ramadan, it was a qada of Ramadan, or if it was another, no, there's no kafara. If it wasn't a man, right? If it wasn't a man, we're going to say similarly the asah in the school is it's not a man, there's no kafara. So a woman does not do the kafara. Even if she's it's called mutawi'ah, like she would, right? Even if she intentionally did so, right? It doesn't matter. There's no kafara for her. And it's specifically intercourse, so it does not apply to breaking a fast for anything else, right? But so is it relevant? Is it not relevant? And then this is also where maqasid sharia comes in. So in maqasid sharia, why would I think about maqasid sharia? Why would I even bother to try and think how Allah works? Because then it helps me in this surgical process. When I'm doing qiyas, I have to do that in light of the maqasid sharia. When I'm eliminating irrelevant things, I do that in maqasid sharia. So I'm looking at, for example, khamr, and I say, what's the issue with khamr? Is it the fact that it's made out of grapes? Like, is there something unique to do with grapes? Is there something unique to do with the fact that it begins with W in English and a kha in Arabic? Is it what is unique about it? So I have to look at the maqasid sharia, say, Allah is trying to keep my mind safe. So therefore, what's relevant to that is intoxicating this, in the fact that it intoxicates, right? And in fact, does it even matter, even if it isn't like ethanol? What if it's a depressant, or if it's what's the opposite of a depressant, Aban?
And as in
like drugs,
a stimulant.
Stimulant, right? Stimulants or depressant, like it doesn't matter, right? It's irrelevant, right? So whether it makes you, it's a depressant or it's a stimulant, doesn't matter. That's not relevant to the discussion. So everyone's doing that. So anyway, since Shafis would say it's a man, it was intercourse. He knew that he couldn't do that. He remembered. It was intentional, right? So now he's going to have to free a slave if he is able. If he is not able, then he's going to fast 2 consecutive months, right? And then so we asked the question here. The Prophet said, "Hal tastati'u an tasuma shahrayn mutatabi'ain?" Are you able to? And he says, no. So what does it tell us? He says we can rely on the fact that he said that he was unable to, meaning he doesn't have the sexual ability to do that. He doesn't have the control to do that. I cannot fast 2 consecutive months. So the relied upon position is that somebody who has a high sexual drive, right, and does not think they can do that, then they're not obliged to, right? That's the relied upon position, right? You might come along and say that's silly, right? And again, you talk about lust. Sheikh Hussein was like, there's a discussion: is shahwa a darura or not, right? Like is shahwa a darura? So like the Hanbalis, they have this discussion: is somebody is living in a non-Muslim country, right? Or forget non-Muslim country, in Dar al-Harb, whatever that is. Okay, Hanbali is living in Dar al-Harb. They say cannot get married, not allowed to do that. Okay. Okay. Well, what if it's a darura? They have to get married, meaning they fear zina. So in the Hanbali school, they have scenarios like if you fear zina, you can sleep with your menstruating wife, or you could masturbate, right? And we would argue, well, sexual need is not a darura anyway. It's not a darura. Like, what do you mean by darura? Like, that's like a haja or like a, it's not darura. It's not life or death. Like, how would it make? How does it change? These things. So here's an example of us, the Shafis, acknowledging it. It's changed. Like he's not obliged to fast 2 months. He's now can go to the next stage because he's not able to uh, because of his ghulma, I believe, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, Sheikh Hussein. Is ghulma. So ghilma is, I believe, ghilma is a plural, like fitya is a plural of ghilman, and ghulma, I believe, as well with the dhamma is high sexual drive.
There's also the word tawakhan. Let's use the same.
Say it again.
No way.
Yeah, tawakhan, yeah.
Tawakhan.
Yeah.
But
But I believe in the minhaj. I think the minhaj it has the word ghulma. I believe that's the word. And that's the
I'll review it. It's worthy of review.
yeah.
But I recall there's also another hadith that's actually more explicit in this. Isn't there?
Um, there's another version of it, but important is there's
Yeah,
another
it's more
version.
explicit that this is his problem.
Okay, I don't remember that one. But so Imam Malik, the way that Imam Malik writes in the Muwatta, what he does, he mentions this version and mentions the other version is somebody broke their fast in Ramadan. So Imam Malik is saying, listen, somebody broke their fast in Ramadan. The point is anybody who breaks their fast. And we say, hang on a minute. Somebody broke their fast in Ramadan, A, and somebody slept with their wife in Ramadan, B. Okay, so how to explain that? Meaning somebody broke their fast through intercourse. So concept is al-umum min awarid al-alfaz. Okay, that generality is something specific to words. So when you say during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a person broke his fast, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told him to do A, B, and C. That is not am. That is mujmal. Mujmal is I don't know what it means. Like it could have been this, it could have been this, could have been. I don't know what it is. So yeah, I cannot use that hadith to make it general to say, well, a person broke his fast during the time of the Prophet and the Prophet told him to do this. So therefore, anybody who breaks his fast, it's not true. The person broke his fast in a particular way, either through eating or drinking or intercourse or making himself throw up or something else that breaks the fast. So you cannot generalize an action that is not, because an action is not universal. If the Prophet ﷺ then said, Man aftara fa'alayhi al-kaffara, fine. Right? Or man aftara amdan fa'alayhi al-kaffara, fine. That's a am, that's a word. But here is a situation. It's a situation of somebody broke their fast. How did he break his fast? Did he do A? Did he do B? Did he C? It doesn't mention. So therefore, I have to now go and try and find out what it is. And we say, here we go. This hadith explains it. So now, so number one, I can't use that as in its umum. And number two, can I do this in qiyas? So then the Hanafis and Malikis say, yeah, we do qiyas. Here, the person broke his fast, qiyas, and anybody else who breaks his fast. And we say, no, there is a khasiyah. There's something unique about intercourse. Intercourse causes ghusl. Intercourse is for lineage. Intercourse does this. The Sharia has a particular consideration of intercourse. It works in a certain way. You cannot do qiyas from intercourse to eating or intercourse to drinking, right? Because they're not the same thing. Allahu a'lam. So anyway, so then he can go to the next stage. So then he says, so it says, give it in charity. And then he says, Ya Rasulullah, there's nobody poorer than me. So then he pays the kafara to himself. So in the Shafi say, this is something khas to the Prophet ﷺ. This is not something that is universal. You cannot, it is not just anybody. You can't, the Mufti cannot do this, right? The Mufti cannot do this. You can't just say, okay, go ahead. You say, Ya Rasulullah, I'm zakat eligible. Can I give it to myself? The Mufti can't do that, right? That's something unique to the Prophet. That's not a general rule. Right? خير. Okay, الفصل الثاني وعن عائشة أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يقبل وهو صائم ويمص لسانها. So there we go. See, how is that non-sexual? رواه أبو داود. Right. So he says here, so Sheikh Albani says it's not daif. Right. So Sheikh Hussein, just general, you haven't been here in my classes, but basically we're using Sheikh Albani's tahqiq because it's useful. Sheikh Albani's methodology, his ahkam are not, are not absolute at all. He's not, to say there's some people who are like he's not an authority at all. That's a bit ridiculous. That's like, there's a lot of kind of people who are kind of like very extreme, like Ibn Taymiyyah, Bin Baz, Sheikh Albani bashers. Like the whole deen is about bashing these people. We say, some scholars they have some things that are right, but generally they're off, right? So Sheikh Albani as a faqih, it's off, right? It's just off. Sheikh Albani as a mutakallim, it's off. Sheikh Albani as a muhaddith, it's off and on, right? He basically represents the methodology of the late scholars. In general, his takhrij is useful. It's just not taken in absolute. That's all, right? Whereas somebody better than him would be someone like Sheikh Shuaib Arnaoud, but it's also not taken in absolute sense, right? But Sheikh Albani is useful to see. Maybe you might be wrong. Obviously, when he says a hadith is in Bukhari and it's weak, there's serious problems there, right? There's serious problems there. It's not kufr, but I'm just saying it's like, you're gonna have to roll your sleeves up quite a lot to kind of make an argument like that. It's quite,
No, I understand what you're saying. I actually listened to almost like the entire first lesson at Mishkat, so
oh,
I'm
okay.
trying to catch up.
Yeah, so 50,000. I don't advise you try and catch up. Honestly, I advise it's better if we will have limited time. If you spend time reading the shuruh and then contributing to the class like that, like hey, it says this and this. You should like Aban, for example, like hey, it says this in the miqar, has this, has that. Following the sharh, looking at other shuruh, find like I don't know, like Ibn Hajar, he has a commentary on some sections of this of the milk. You looked at it and bringing something else that's different. I think that's better use of your time. I'm considering actually getting rid of all my recordings on this because I don't think it's it's kind of like there's classes I do formally and classes I do casually. Like this is kind of a bit casual. So Allah.
Okay.
So inshallah when I die be like وكان الشيخ في قمة التواضع لم ينصح باستماع إلى دروسه الله أكبر, right? So there's tawadhu and there's jahl. So I'm in the jahl camp. I'm not in the tawadhu camp. May Allah protect us and give us ilm amal al-hal inshallah. Okay, so anyway, this is a kadalil, right? This gives an idea that sexual activity that doesn't lead to intercourse would be halal, or B, that it's khas of the khawas of the Prophet ﷺ. There are many, so in Bab al-Nikah, we talk about the khasa'is of the Prophet ﷺ, right, in Shafi fiqh. So there are actually many things like that. So maybe we can say it's of the khasa'is, maybe that's an argument that the Prophet ﷺ could engage in sexual activity, but we can't. But then there's a problem, it's always a problem. When you deal with the khasa'is, it's always a problem because you start claiming this is of the khasa'is, that's the khasa'is. Well, how much does a follow him then? You basically made him an angel that I can't follow, So it's kind of Allah. وعن أبي هريرة أن رجلا. So again, as a Shafis, we can say the hadith da'if, خلاص, right? Arguably. And in general, any hadith in Sahih and Sunnah Abi Dawood is arguably Sahih and arguably weak, right? So we did this in the Muqidha class. In the Muqidha class, we read from Shurut al-Imam al-Hazimi and others, and he's saying basically like of the Shurut of Nasa'i and Abu Dawood is that they will narrate from people as long as they're not muttafaq ala da'fihi, right? So the people of that, so the town where that person's from, he's from Sarakhs. The people of Sarakhs don't agree that he's weak. So that means he's possibly reliable. So therefore the hadith is possibly acceptable, right? So you will find this that many hadiths that kind of the borderline, is it hasan, is it da'if? It's often somewhere in between, right? That you could use it. We will use it selectively, right? The Shafis will use it to back up our point or not use it because weak, So Allahu A'lam. وعن أبي هريرة أن رجلا سأل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم عن المباشرة للصائم فرخص له وأتاه آخر فسأله فنهاه فإذا الذي رخص له شيخ وإذا الذي نهاه شاب. So he said in touching, again, does touching mean sexual? Does it not mean sexual? So is it that it's forbidden for the shab because it's going to lead to intercourse, or is it forbidden or is it forbidden because is it touching itself, just holding hands or hugging in a way that is not sexual, and for the young man it will actually lead to sin, right? So it's we have a similar discussion, Sheikh Hussein, in the issue of mubashara and istimta' for the ha'id, right? So we have three positions. One is it's haram between the navel and the knee. So this is not the late school, the early school. One is that it is halal, and one is that it's halal as long as you don't know that it will lead to the haram, right? So it's like, so then basically we'd have the same tafriq. That would be like somebody who can control themselves. You could have sexual activity with your wife while she's menstruating between the navel and knee, as long as it didn't as long as you know that it's not going to result in intercourse, right? So this is a similar kind of thing. We could possibly put it in that way as well. But the relied upon position, as we know, is that it is between the navel and the knee is haram.
So sexual activity is a term, but when you say a better term is just simply touching?
Yeah, so here, mubashara, what does he mean here? That's the question.
Oh yeah, no, but I'm talking about in the Shafi'i positions that you just quoted.
No, so for us then we're going to have mubashara, which means skin to skin contact. Okay, in the
Yeah.
context of navel to knee, we have mubashara, which means skin to skin contact, and we have istimta'. So that's an issue. That's an ikhtilaf in the late school. What is actually haram when you say navel to knee? Is it
Yeah.
skin to skin contact, or is it istimta'? Because they're not the same. And even I think Ibn Hajar, he has both opinions in different books. So it is a genuine like what is the dab? What is it exactly?
Interesting, because I remember looking into it at one point, and it seemed that the most later said no, just simply touching, skin to
Yeah.
skin touching.
Yeah. So
That's what they
in
agreed
which
upon.
case, looking with lust or touching through clothes would be halal, right?
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
but yeah, but and I think even but it's a genuine debate though. I'm pretty sure within the late school, right?
No, yeah, it is.
Okay. وعنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من ذرعه القيء وهو صائم فليس عليه قضاء ومن استقاء عمدا فليقضي. Right. So now this is a dalil as well for us to the same thing. It wasn't amdan. Going back to the thing about the person who forgot, right? So he was forced. So, here then apparently, so if we go with the same logic of the Malikis, right? Go to the same logic of the Malikis, they said, oh, you didn't fast. Okay, well, you didn't fast, then you threw up, right? So if you throw up, there's a break of fast in the Maliki school. And they probably say no. Okay, well, then that's not fair because at the end of the day, you didn't fast. If you say that you did like al-imsak and imsak and mufattirat fi'lan, like you actually didn't do them, right? You did do them. You threw up, right? Right. So we're going to say here so we're going to say here there's a system which is الإكراه والنسيان والجهل. خلاص, you do any of these things out of إكراه or جهل or نسيان, خلاص, it's excused. So here you threw up, etc. فليس عليه ومن استقاء عمدا فليقضي. Right. ورواه الترمذي وأبو داود وابن ماجه. Now another thing, again, just speaking internally, forgive me, Aban, we're going to have all these internal Shafi discussions now, but we have issues in the Shafi school that sometimes that often ikrah will not be treated the same as nisyan and jahl. So for the example of turning away from the qibla, you turned away from the qibla a little bit because you forgot you were praying. Okay, I came and pushed you away from the qibla a little bit. That's not okay. Why? Because it's nadir, right? So often the ikrah, because it's nadir, it's not excused, right? It's not every single scenario that nisyan and jahal will be recognized and excuse one from any effects. It's not It's not the same that ikrah does it in every single scenario, right? Allah.
Yeah.
And even here, we can see a difference between somebody who threw up and somebody who intentionally threw up a gun point. So I put a gun to your head. Is there a difference? So we're going to say no, it's the same, right? If you a gun point, you ate, right? But it's arguable that it's different. That they're not the same. Like one is like when you say when you say like when you say mukrah, like what do you mean? Like I literally didn't have a choice. Like I had no volition, or I was forced to choose to do that. There's a difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we say, for example, a woman committed zina through ikrah, meaning she was raped. May Allah protect us all. Okay, obviously
Mm-hmm.
it's simple. Okay, what if she a gunpoint? She said, if you don't allow this man to sleep with you, I'll shoot you. Okay, well, there's a difference, right? So, well, like they call it ilja, where there's ikrah. One's ilja, like you pushed me off a cliff and I fell onto somebody and killed him. Versus you put a gun to my head and said, kill so and so or I'll kill you. Okay, that's different. They're not the same hukum, right? They're not the same thing. So that's it's not ikrah. So one is I just swallowed some poison, so then I was forced to make myself throw up. Or you did intentionally make yourself throw up, right? So they are two different things. So anyway, both of them in the Shafi school, we're going to say it doesn't make you fast, but there's a difference there, right? There's a difference between, there's a difference between when you say forced. It's not exactly the same thing. So رواه الترمذي وأبو داود وابن ماجه والدارمي وقال الترمذي هذا حديث غريب لا نعرفه إلا من حديث عيسى بن يونس وقال محمد يعني البخاري لا أراه محفوظا, right? So here again, what does this term mean? هذا حديث غريب, أي there's تفرد. لا نعرفه إلا من حديث عيسى بن يونس. So it's only been narrated by the chain goes through all Isa ibn Yunus. It's not spreading out before him, and that's a bit problematic. So either he is problematic or it's odd that he's narrating from this person. Why is nobody else narrating that hadith? One of the two. Okay? And then he says, إمام قال محمد أي محمد بن إسماعيل I mean in Bukhari لا أراه محفوظا. I think there's another version of the chain that is actually correct. Right, so mahfuz meaning so that this is shadh basically. This is shadh and the other one is mahfuz, right? So presumably there's another version of this hadith that has other content. Now, what is that? I don't know. Allahu maybe you can look in Tirmidhi and see what is there. Is there another version of this hadith that has it's phrased in another way? Allahu a'lam. Right? But usually, when you say mahfuzan, that means this what we're seeing is shadh, and there's another version of the hadith which other people besides Isa ibn Yunus are narrating, which are actually correct. But Allahu a'lam. وعن معدان بن طلحة أن أبا الدرداء حدثه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قاء فأفطر. قال فلقيت ثوبان في مسجد دمشق فقلت إن أبا الدرداء حدثني أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قاء فأفطر. قال صدق وأنا صببت له وو not وضوءه وضوءه. رواه أبو داود والترمذي والدارمي. So this is a very interesting hadith because it can be used to prove that vomiting breaks wudu, right? So the Prophet ﷺ was fasting, okay? The Prophet ﷺ was fasting and he threw up and he broke his fast. And he says, that's correct. I'm the one who poured the wudu water for him. So if you take it literally, meaning wudu water, that means he broke his wudu as well. And throwing up breaks your wudu, right? But if you say no, it's just wudu, like wudu for us is a mustalah, is a term. For them, it's just washing. Like I'm the one who poured the water for him to wash his mouth, right? And so anyway, there's a dalil here that it breaks the fast, right? But maybe it doesn't break the fast. So maybe he was fasting a sunnah fast and he decided, I'm not feeling well, I'm not going to fast then, right? So it wasn't that vomiting broke the fast, right? So the fa, what does fa mean? Does fa mean then, or does fa mean so, right? So it's a bit problematic. Fa has lots of meanings. So qa'a fa aftara, that doesn't necessarily mean that one is the cause of the other. It doesn't mean that that the qay, right, is the reason for the iftar, right? It could mean just one happened than the other. So he broke it, he vomited, and then because he decided to break his sunnah fast, he broke his sunnah fast. Or because he felt sick, and you can break your fast if you're sick, he broke his fast. Does that make sense? You're both following?
You cut out for a second.
Aban, did you hear me?
Yeah, I got it today.
Okay, so we were saying, Sheikh Hussein, was that when you say X happened, then Y happened, X doesn't have to be the reason for Y. It's not always the case.
Oh yeah, I'm following
Right?
you.
So that's the issue. Is like, okay, this happened, then that happens. Like, well, yeah, maybe that happened. That it doesn't. They're not actually the one. That's not actually necessarily the reason. But the default it is, right? The default is we say, yeah, fa would mean this happened, then this, right? So in usul, we say like, how do you find out the illa? There's this way, there's this way. Oh, using things like fa. This happened, then this happened. The default is fa means is for the reason, right? This happened, then this happened, right? That's the default, but it's not always the case. وعن عامر بن ربيعة قال رأيت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ما لا أحصي يتسوق وهو صائم. Right? So this is the dalil uh, dalil of people like Imam Nawawi that his ikhtiyar is it's not makruh to do siwak any point in the fasting. He was fasting, right? So on countless time while he was fasting, right? So there's no reason specifically that you can't fast after zawal. You can't use siwak after zawal. وعن أنس قال جاء رجل إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال اشتكيت عيني أفأكتحل وأنا صائم قال نعم رواه الترمذي وقال ليس إسناده بالقوي وأبو عاتك الراوي يضعف. Right? So we as Shafis, we say the eye is not a manfadh maftuh. So even just like your finger, just like your pores of your skin, right? You had a nicotine patch, you had some kind of, I don't know what other medication people take through the skin, a cream that you absorb through your skin. It's fine, doesn't matter, even if you could taste it, right? So if you drank, you could drink through your eyes in principle, right? Like somebody's, you put eye drops, right? That's what we say, but the hadith is the weak. Allah. وعن بعض أصحاب النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لقد رأيت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بالعرج يصب على رأسه الماء وهو صائم من العطش أو من الحر رواه مالك وأبو داود. Right? So when you say رواه مالك وأبو داود, it can be that, for example, Abu Dawood is narrating from Al-Qa'nabi, who's narrating from Malik, or from somebody else like that. It could be like the same hadith. Okay? Like Bayhaqi will narrate from Ibn Dasa from Abu Dawood. So the Takhrij will say, Rawahu Abu Dawood wal Bayhaqi. Well, that's because Bayhaqi is narrating it from Abu Dawood. Or Rawahu Malik wa Abu Dawood. That's because Dawood is narrating it from Malik. But it's not always the case. Sometimes it's a totally different chain. Right? So it could be like very different. Right? This is about the previous hadith, Aban?
Yes, sir.
Um, uh-huh. So you see that? See the what's the so basically everybody else is saying, oh, it's fine, right? Everybody else is saying it's fine. Let me bring this up here. I just want to read this out because it's kind of useful, okay? Let me copy this whole thing. Copy. Okay, let's put this up here and read it together.
Apologies. I'll be with you guys. My phone's about to turn off just in
Okay,
case.
no worries, no worries. Let's do whiteboard 1 second. Let me just show this. Let's look at this together. How do I do this? Stop share. We'll just read this thing and then we'll stop, inshallah. What time do we start, guys?
We started at
We
like,
start.
go ahead.
11,
Yeah, go ahead.
we started at 11:50 or 10:50?
We started basically, I think, as per PDT around 8 o'clock PDT. So I don't know.
Okay, but
It was
like
Yeah.
half an
more
hour.
than an hour ago?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just concerned I was going to give you the full hour as well. Okay. I don't have the full. Can you I can't get there. I can't get there. Can I give you why can't I access the whole thing? Well,
Or I'll just send you the
no,
link,
I have
Siri.
it has everything I need. I just think Aban, I think you just put a little there we go.
That was me.
That was me. No worries. Okay. So let's look at this again, okay, guys. Okay, so it says, so the hadith, what do we have in Tirmidhi? It says, quotes a hadith, and then he says, Bukhari says the hadith that so-and-so is not that amazing, or it's odd that so-and-so narrates the hadith, and I don't think it's mahfuz. Mahfuz meaning there are other versions of this hadith that are more correct. There are other versions of the hadith that are more correct. Now let's look at this. Okay? So he says, it's a hadith of Hisham bin Hassan from Ibn Sirin from Abi Hurairah, marfu'an, as the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he says, this chain, as the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is odd, and there are other versions that are correct. So he says, قال الطيبي da 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 da. So then Ibn Humam, late scholar, think about how the late scholars work. قال بخاري لا أراه محفوظا لهذا يعني للغرابة. It's odd. It's not just so mahfuz means this is not the correct version of this hadith. There's another version of hadith which is more correct. He says لا يقدح في ذلك بعد تصديقه الراوي. That's fine. فهو الشاذ المقبول. Notice this. It's weird and off, but it's accepted. وقد صححه الحاكم على شرط الصحيحين وابن حبان ورواه الدرقطني وقال رواته كلهم ثقات. Okay, so I say, how to explain this? Let's put Hakim and Ibn Hibban to the side for now. Okay? You are reliable, fine. Okay? So there's a square in the middle of the page, so we can, if I can delete that. There you go. No. You are reliable, fine. That doesn't mean you don't make mistakes. So you narrate something which is contrary to somebody else who is stronger than you. So you need to show me a proof now. I need a proof from you that you're quite good. Okay? So now what's going to happen is someone like Bukhari says, I know another version of this self-same hadith. Okay? And that version of this self-same hadith is stronger than this version. And I'm saying that version, because you're not that amazing, you're good, but not that amazing, I'm going to say this is shadh. Okay, so now I come along, I'm like, he says, well, there's number one, there's a mutaba'ah, somebody else narrates the same hadith, وَقَدْ تَابَعَ عِيسَى ibn Yunus and Hisham ibn Hassan. So it could be argued that no, this is not a mistake, this is right, because this has supporting evidence. Right? Because the chain goes what? The chain, okay. So then he says, رواه ابن ماجه. So there's a متابعة in Ibn Majah. ورواه الحاكم وسكت عليه. And then it says ورواه مالك في الموطأ موقوف على ابن عمر. Okay? So now, that's what I'm interested in. So you can imagine this. There is this golden prize, which is called the Muwatta of Imam Malik. Super, super sahih. I find something else which is reliable in principle, but it gives me contrary information to what's in the Muwatta. The Muwatta is saying that these are the words of Ibn Umar. So now Bukhari is looking at it saying, if the quote in the Muwatta wasn't there, if that wasn't in the Muwatta, I'd trust the hadith. Why not? I trust it. But now there's another version of the same hadith. I honestly believe that what you're telling me is a mistake because you're not that amazing. You're good. So this is the problem. He's a thiqah, so we should trust him. It's not like that. It's how much should we trust him in face of how much contrary evidence, right? So if you look in the Muwatta now, let's try and see. Can you put up the whole chain in in Tirmidhi and the whole chain in Ibn Majah, and let's look at the whole chain in could you bring up the chain in Ibn Majah and in Tirmidhi, Aban?
Yes, yeah. Or I think we could use that tool. Remember the AI tool I'd sent?
What
I
was that?
think that pulls up the chain. Says that Hadith software. I think I've posted in the group.
If
Hold
you just
on.
bring it up again, I'm just going to bring it up in the Muwatta.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Okay,
but
sure.
this is ذرعه القيء, right? What's the hadith again we're looking at? The hadith was uh this was man ذرعه القيء. Yeah. Notice even the language. That language is not a very common word, right? Let's bring it up here, Malik. Malik. Yeah, and you see how strong this chain is? This is like a super strong chain. Okay, so look at this. Okay, look how strong this chain is. حدثني عن مالك عن نافع عن عبد الله بن عمر أنه كان يقول, he used to say, من استقاء وهو صائم فعليه القضاء ومن ذرعه القيء فليس عليه القضاء. So this is a super sound chain, and Ibn Umar used to say this. Okay, so now, is it possible that the fatwa of Abdullah ibn Umar was changed into a hadith accidentally by these otherwise reliable narrators, and then it became a hadith? That's the question. So it's possible that a Sahabi says something and the Prophet says something. That's fine. It's not the end of the world, right? But it's also possible that a quote from a Sahabi can accidentally change into um, into a hadith. Okay. So let's look at the chains in. So what is it? Dhara'ahu al-Qay. You have the chain in Abani, of the chain in Tirmidhi and Abu Dawud and Ibn Majah.
You see, they click on the link, it will show everything.
Oh, you put it in the chat.
So click on the. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's in there.
There we go. Okay, so it says. Okay, so this is a totally different chain. But look at the language. The language is exactly the same. Almost exactly the same as the one from Ibn Umar. They all narrated from Abu Hurairah. And notice how far down in the chain he is. He's here. So Isa ibn Yunus. Isa ibn Yunus. The Madar is Isa ibn Yunus. And Hakim narrates another version of it. Isa ibn Yunus. And Darimi. Isa ibn Yunus. Everybody, that's what he's saying. It's all here's a mutaba'a, right? He narrates it he narrates it from here with this chain to Isa ibn Yunus, and he mentions a mutaba'a حدثنا عبيد الله عن علي بن حسن and Hasan ibn Yath جميعا عن Hisham. So he said that's a mutaba', right? And then something else. Okay. So anyway, we have two possibilities. The issue is, if there is a mistake, then so what about how good how good is Hisham? Let's have a look at these people then. Rawat. So let's look at how good is he. He's in front of everything. He narrates from these people.
So see, when I just put the thing as Zaral Kai, the keywords, the chain, and oh, you anyway saw the link in Muwatta, right? It's Nasir and Abdullah ibn Umar.
Yeah, so it's super strong.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Hisham ibn Hassan. كان خشبيا ولم يكن يحفظ. كان شعبة يتقي حديث هشام عن عطاء. ومحمد ibn Sirin, notice? See this?
Yes.
Right? So when you start going into the details, you're like, hang on a minute. So Mu'adh said, كان شعبة يتقي حديث هشام عن عطاء ومحمد. This is Muhammad ibn Sirin. This is Muhammad ibn Sirin. See? So there's issues there. So Aslan, there's issues with with this person. Um, so here he disagrees though, right? This is Yahya ibn Ma'in. He says what? فهشام ابن حسان أحب إليك في ابن سيرين أو يزيد ابن أبو قال كلاهما ثبتان. He said it wasn't a problem. So you can go either way. It's not impossible to say that the hadith is weak. And that's what Bukhari is saying I don't accept it. Similarly, okay. Ali al-Madini, what does he say? أما أحاديث هشام and Muhammad في الصحاح. Notice? So Ali al-Madini is saying it's fine. Where's my Tahdhib al-Tahdhib? One. This is like giving me specific. I just want جرح تعديل تصنيف.
So if you click on the I, it takes you to the source text, like
want this here.
the.
It's giving me specific. I just want
the whole picture, right?
yeah. I just want to read Tahdhib al-Kamal.
Okay. So I think if you click on that I think it'll take you to Tazib al-Kamal, the I beneath the thing.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
The
Yes, yeah, I see it. Tahdhib al-Tahdhib here. Oh, okay, great, fantastic. Wow. So let's just have a look. So some people are criticizing him from Muhammad ibn Sirin. Others like Yahya ibn Ma'in and Ali al-Madini are not. It'd be nice if he specifically mentioned this hadith, you know? Somebody's criticizing this very hadith. That's what you find sometimes. Here we go. Shu'bah criticized him, right? Listen to this. رأيت أبي يكلم شعبة في رجل فقلت في من كلمته قال في هشام ibn Hassan قال دمر عليه. So Shu'bah really didn't like him. So he really didn't like him. So there we go. Okay. So here, Ali Madini saying his hadiths from Muhammad ibn Sirin that we're looking at here is fine. So it seems like Shu'bah just really doesn't like him. I just want to try and see if it specifically mentions this hadith. It'd be really nice, you know? ما تكاد تنكر عليه شيء إلا وجدت غيره قد رواه إما أيوب وإما عوف. So you find something odd and you find somebody else doing mutaba of it, so he's fine. Again, rating from Muhammad ibn Sirin, he's fine, according to Yahya ibn Ma'in. Here, Abu Hatim said, كان صدوق وكان يتثبت في رفع الحديث عن محمد ibn Sirin. So this is exactly what we're looking at. We're trying to find this particular problem where is this a possible mistake? And he say no, he was very particular careful of making sure this hadith is actually correct. Right. So here Abu Hatim Razi, who's very strict, he's saying no. Specifically, when he's specifically narrating from Muhammad ibn Sirin, he was very, very careful, is this hadith sahih or not? And he's saying, is this hadith marfu or not? And it is. Right. So Allahu A'lam, maybe Bukhari's not right here. Allahu A'lam. It doesn't have to be right. So everyone else seems to be. So Shu'bah, if you take a Shu'bah's opinion, it seems in Bukhari is right. If you take Ali al-Madini, if you here Abu Hatim al-Razi, going with Yahya ibn Ma'in, it seems fine. It's fine hadith. And now we go to somebody else. So what does that make sense, Abad?
Yeah, Siri. But basically, I'm guessing Bukhari. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so Bukhari, in light of all this evidence, I think, like you said, he saw the stronger chain, like the golden chain from Malik, and that's why he's like,
Yeah.
even though these guys are saying is good, that is like gold. So, like,
exactly, that was gold,
I feel
and he seems like he's inclined towards Shu'bah's opinion. He's like, these people aren't that amazing. So here's the problem, though. Notice how Ibn Humam and others, the mutaakhirin, they're like, no, but they're thiqat, it's fine. It's not like that. Because you can still make a mistake if you're a thiqah. If you're not really, really good, when you bring surprising information, you have to show something that's very different, right? You're working with your superior, and you say something different to him. No, he's not going to listen to you. You have to be like, I'm sorry, like I have like after work or after like I have to tell it like I have to bring this to your attention. What you did was wrong, and my suggestion was right. And he's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, I show you this, show you this, show you this, and then it's like, oh, okay. Like it takes quite a lot for people to be able to prove something. So when you bring something that's something strange, like it's not saying that you're weak. We're saying that there's shudud, right? It's shad, but it's not necessarily maqbool. So the way that Ibn Humam phrases it, oh, shad maqbool, right? And it seems, Allahu Alam, the same thing with Hakim. Hakim is this is what Imam Dhahabi mentions. He said with Hakim, he has many hadiths that are ظاهره السلامة or something like ظاهره, they're fine, but they're actually, there's a ilal khafiyya. And this is what we're talking about. Things like this, like actually it's not right. So this is reason 5022 to be Maliki. Joking. But does it make sense, Avan?
Yes, very fruitful, this guy.
So that I'm not saying we're agreeing with Bukhari, but Imam Bukhari's approach is the approach that we're looking at. That approach is the right approach. The approach of not just doing jama'. You say, oh, it's all fine. Actually, they're being critical, very, very critical. There's actually quite strong evidence. These are the words of the Prophet, but he's saying there's stronger evidence and it's fishy. So I'm going to go with the words of this, not the words of the Prophet. Right? That's very interesting. Right? And then, again, we've done the research. We said, Habibi, with all due respect, Abu Hatim al-Razi, Yahya ibn Ma'in, Ali al-Madini, they're all happy. And this key thing here, وَكَانَ يَتَثَبَّتُ فِي رَفْعِ الْحَدِيثِ عَنْ Muhammad ibn Sirin, that's a piece of gold for us, like fantastic. The problem that we are thinking about, or half of the problem that we're thinking about, because also there's narrated behind him, but half the problem we're thinking about is not there. Because he's specifically mentioning that, he was very careful about this. The issue that we're looking at, he was careful about it. الله أعلم. إن شاء الله we'll stop here. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.